lying down already today while I just say hello, week 7. Still very much in morning stretch mode. Just I've been coughing something that I swallowed the wrong way or went down the wrong way for a long time. So just for anybody who hasn't joined before, welcome, and just know that this is a sort of follow along experience. So obviously because I can't see anybody else, I'm just alone in my room talking to myself. So that means I can't give corrections or encourage you to rest when you need to. I can only set a good example by doing exactly what I want and what feels good for me, and hope that you can do the same. So I'll be guiding through various sort of soft functional movement practices, and then maybe getting a little bit stronger a bit later, but I don't know. I'm feeling pretty like I just need a restorative session today. But always the idea is that anybody watching can just take it further when they want to, take it back when they want to. It doesn't take a lot to think. If you see me on my in a plank position with my hands and feet on the floor, it doesn't take a lot to think. If you feel like doing press-ups, you could do press-ups there, even if I'm not doing it, for example, if you want to train a bit harder. Whereas if I'm doing press-ups and you don't want to, you can just be there and explore that in a different way, explore the position. So we're very much going into everything gently with curiosity to explore and just make ourselves feel comfortable, make ourselves more efficient doing what feels comfortable. So I'm going to begin lying on the ground, and I'm switching to speak in the first person now, just to make it clear that it's my practice. Oh, this cough. And I just want to see how I feel lying on the ground. I'm going to rest my arms down by my side. And I have my legs long, so that's a comfortable position for me for now. Just to notice what I can sense while I'm lying on the ground. So just vaguely get a sense of my own volume, my three-dimensionality. I can sense I've got one leg a bit longer than the other right now, or one leg is a little straighter than the other. So just comparing how either leg lies on the ground, and then comparing either side of the pelvis. Noticing I'm tipped a little down and to one side. Noticing the curve under my back. I just placed my fingers under my back to actually feel that curve. So for me it's quite a big curve today. I'm just placing my fingers under my back and feeling the shape of that curve. And then I lay my arms long again, and I keep scanning, comparing the left and right up through my torso. Feeling a little bit more weight on the right side of my rib cage. I feel like it's easier for me to lift my right shoulder off the ground than it is for me to lift my left shoulder off the ground. So I just do that just test. Lifting my right shoulder off the ground towards the ceiling, really easy. My left shoulder presses into the ground really well. Lifting my left shoulder off the ground towards the ceiling, not quite so easy. I feel like I can't transfer the weight over onto the right side of my ribs quite so easily onto the right side of my shoulder. Possible, but just not quite so easy. These things are interesting because they vary. And I just come back to lying and scanning. I don't have a very clear sense of my neck. It feels a little shorter on the right. I feel a little bit more bunched up in the muscles around my face and jaw on the right hand side as well. I take my attention to my arms. I feel one arm a little shorter and closer to the body. I feel the other arm a little bigger, more expansive, slightly further away. Wow. Then I stand both my feet. And I come back to placing my hands underneath the curve of my lower back. So I've got my palms facing down. And my fingers just slide. I'm going as high as I can actually. So kind of like feeding the backs of my fingertips, backs of my hands right down from my armpits. I just slide my hands down the side of my ribs. And as I slide them down, they slide underneath me, sliding under my back at the lower ribs, and then at the waistline I can get my hands kind of all the way underneath, so my fingertips meet in the middle underneath my back. I'm just leaving my hands there so that the backs of my fingers, a little bit the back of my hand, is just supporting the curve of my lumbar spine. Just providing a little support for that bridge of the back. I just open and close my knees softly. Take my knees a little side to side. Really soft movement. Just looking for whatever helps me relax around the hip joints. And then I just leave that, feet standing again to rest. And I just slide my hands out from underneath my lower back and see how I'm feeling there now. A little softer. Just going to lengthen both legs again. And I'm just going to take a long stretch, just reaching my arms above my head, inducing this kind of morning feeling. I lift my head in my hands and just roll on my back. I can lift my feet off the floor, I can roll side to side. I just get the feeling that I want to have a slightly more rounded back. I want to open up the back of the body, press the back of the ribs into the ground. So I'm just coming up into this little beetle shape. Doing a little side bend in this beetle shape. So taking one elbow to one knee and then the other elbow to the other knee. And that's very much a side bend in the ribs. Playing with holding my head at different angles, Noticing different things, always just doing something but noticing at the same time what that does, how I do it. So for now I'm noticing as I take one elbow to one knee, the other side really opens up, and I can feel that, I realised I can feel that opening either just along the ribs, or if I reach through my elbow a little bit, I can feel the opening from my hip to my elbow. So I'm just opening from the hip to the elbow on one side at a time. I had enough of that, so just rest my head down, let my legs lengthen again. Just going to play with very softly, continuing to round my back in different ways. So coming up to sit, I've got my feet together, and my hands holding my feet. And I'm just going to be lowering my head very slowly. So I'm using my hands on my own feet for support. My feet are together, my knees are open. And I'm just very softly letting my head start to drop down. I can feel the incremental lengthening of the back of the body. Just like I did when I was lying on my back, I take one elbow to one knee and turn a little bit, my head, my shoulders. Take the other elbow towards the other knee and turn a little bit, my head and shoulders. So whereas when I was lying on my back, I was having to work against gravity and use abdominal muscles to do this, now gravity is helping me drop my head. And what I have to do is be very attentive to where and how I am lengthening in my back. I feel quite stiff this morning. So I can really feel that when I just very, very softly, slowly turn my head one way and the other, that's asking for very different lengthening in the muscles along the whole back. I can come up and down a little bit. So I'm just feeling the lengthening that's happening in the back and then exploring that lengthening. I can explore it by drawing my tummy in more and rounding my back more. Or I can explore it by letting my elbows bend, letting my head drop further, or pushing my hands into my feet so that my elbows get longer and my head comes away, and my shoulders round more. I can explore it by, I let go of my feet and take my hands out to my elbows, take my elbows out to my knees, so my hands are on my ankles, my elbows are on my knees. That's a different position. And now from there I'm just going to let my hands go anywhere I want. So I'm walking my hands around on the floor. All the time, I don't really want to be in a full stretch, so for me this morning this is quite intense down the back. My back hasn't really woken up yet. The muscles down it haven't really woken up yet, so for me this needs to be very, very soft, and I'm just paying attention to this incremental lengthening and shortening of the muscles down either side of the spine, right the way from the pelvis at the base of the spine to the base of the skull at the top of the spine. And yeah, I'm not staying in a deep stretch all the time, I'm just moving softly around variations. I take my hands behind me on the floor. I've actually got fists, making fists that go behind me on the floor. But I'm still dropping my head forwards. And I'm just going to lengthen up my back and look forwards for a moment. Looking around, side bending, twisting, rolling my back. Really looking for a very soft, very luxurious mobilization of the spine in every direction, any direction. Doing a little circle with my head so it drops down, goes to the side, looks up, to the other side, dropping down again. But even this circle of the head is letting my chest move. I want to move my chest, move my ribs, and move the whole length of the spine. And then going the other way. Starting to feel a little bit more luxurious now. Really feeling, where do I want the length? I can feel when I take my head to the left, I feel this nice opening up on the right side of my neck that I didn't know I needed, but apparently I do. I'm just exploring, where does the head go? How can the head move my chest and shoulders? And I'm starting to take my hands into it, so I'm reaching my arms around now. It can get a little bit more obvious. It looks like a bigger movement. I'm just reaching through the fingertips, letting the head go into a side bend, into a twist, looking to one knee, looking to the ground, looking to the other knee, reaching my arm overhead, reaching my arm behind me, leaning on the other hand, and then leaning forwards all the way. Feel a little bit more ready and able to come forwards into a deeper fold at the hips at the same time. And I'm just still rounding my back. I'm still really trying to round my back. Forehead going down. And that's enough of that. I'm going to lie down again. I feel that I'm starting to soften into the ground a little bit more. I'm going to roll to one side. And just continue to explore rounding my back while I lie on my side. So quite fetus-like. Tucking my head in, I'm using my own hand to help me draw my head in towards my knees. I'm just doing tiny little wriggles. Just wriggling into this kind of fetus position. Feeling how it opens up different ribs in the back of my body. How I could relax my eyes, my jaw. How a little wriggle through my hips and shoulders changes what's going on in my back. Tucking my head in a little bit more, releasing a little bit, tucking in again, and so on, just wriggling a little bit, keeping this very live. I've got my hand right over my head, my hand on the back of my head, helping me just feel tucked up and rounded. I'm just going to let that go and roll, pouring the weight onto my back. Softly rolling onto my back. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So as I lie on my side, I draw my knees up in front of my chest, I just wriggle around a little bit, make myself as comfortable as possible. Oh, there's a little patch of sunshine coming in. I bring my top arm right the way over my head so that my hand can just kind of grip the back of my skull and help me draw my own forehead down towards my own knees. Maybe even the crown of my head is going towards my knees. And I keep it wriggly. On this side, for some reason, I can get both hands on the back of my head. Wriggly, wriggly, wriggly. I just have the top hand on the back of my head again. The other arm is reaching down towards my feet. Getting into more of a fetus position. I bring my top hand now down to the same top foot, and I'm using this top hand to pull my top knee. By holding my top foot, I pull my top knee in towards me further. And I'm going to roll onto my back again in this little beetle shape, holding onto both feet and pulling my knees in. I roll a little bit side to side. So here I can start to feel that I can pull my belly, not really pull, but just let my belly sink away from my thighs. I'm using my feet to help me keep my head up. I'm going to see if I can keep my feet and knees where they are, and then just bring my hands behind my head. And again, I'm just breathing into the back of my body and having a little wriggle. So like I did when I was lying on my side, in this kind of fetus position, but now I'm lying on my back and having to do the same work, but the same movement, but now working against gravity, to have a little wriggle in a kind of fetal position. I roll to my side a little bit. Not working with momentum though, I'm just drawing everything in the front of my body. How far over my knees can I get my elbows whilst talking? And softening everything down, 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 down. Soften my legs down to the ground and just lengthen everything. Spilling off my blanket. I'm going to roll over onto my belly and start to explore arching the back. I'm just going to lift my head and lower it, and do that a few times. Lifting and lowering. I'm trying to be very soft. I'm not doing the same movement every time. Sometimes I lift my head just a millimetre. Just an inch. Sometimes I lift my head further. I feel a bit like especially with my hair like this, I feel a bit like a mole coming out of a hole into the light. I close my eyes actually and look around with my eyes closed. Trying to see with my eyes closed. Looking up, looking down, looking to the side, twisting. Keeping my ribs soft Always practicing this kind of dual awareness of what I'm doing with my eyes and head, how I'm arching my back softly, but at the same time what's going on elsewhere in my body. What can I feel in my legs? What am I doing with my arms? I'm going to take both hands out in front of me on the ground. So my arms are reaching forwards and my fingers are spread and my thumbs are together. And I lay my forehead down on the ground. I draw my ribs in towards me and draw my tummy in so that I'm pressing my shoulders open. I just have a little wriggle side to side. I can let my pelvis move, I can let my ribs move, but all the time I'm tucking my tummy in and drawing my ribs in, trying to close my ribs, a rib cage closure that presses my arms open. I tuck my toes underneath on the floor to use my toes more to help me squidge around on the ground and open up my shoulders. And then I'm just resting my head down, keeping my arms where they are, lengthening my toes. And I'm just going to softly look up. As I look up, I let my elbows come in towards me. My hands are still together, palms spread on the floor. So I'm looking up in a little sort of mini cobra position. And then I start to look down and I reach my hands forwards and that opens up my shoulders. I start to look up. I come as high as I can with my hands already where they are, and then my hands start to draw in and I start to draw my shoulders down and back. It's just little, my back is comfortable, I'm only doing what's comfortable. I'm reaching my hands forwards and bringing my forehead down to the blanket as I tuck my chin in and my ribs draw in. And then looking forward, seeing how long can I keep my arms that open, delaying drawing my hands in, and then eventually as my shoulders drop down and roll back, my hands draw in. I want to bring my hands further back now. And I play with where my hands are on the ground next to me. What's the rotation of my arms? So I'm going to just come up and stay up. Again, I'm only doing what's comfortable in my back. And I want to play around with where my hands are. And to play around with where my hands are, of course I can move the rest of my body. So as I take one elbow down to one knee, so as I look down, as I take one elbow down on one side, I shorten in that side, I feel that that knee wants to come up. That's a functional pattern. So that's good. Turning the other way. Taking the other elbow down to the other knee. If I want to look back behind me, just take my hands back on the floor. My elbow goes towards that knee and the knee also comes up towards the elbow. I'm just going to rest there. We're going to keep moving around, worming around, squirming around on the ground. And I'm just playing with where can my arms go. So maybe they go out in front of me. Maybe they reach all the way out to the side. Maybe they cross over. Maybe one reaches up and one reaches down. That gives me a really nice side bend opening. Maybe I want to come up higher. And then I can take my arms back and into a little dive. rolling my shoulders forwards and back. I can feel that if I roll my shoulders forwards at a certain point, it's not even possible to stay up. And if I roll my shoulders back, they can take me up. And I want to come up a little bit higher onto my hands. So I'm still just basically lying on my front and playing with where my hands go. And where my hands go affects my shoulders. So I'm listening to my shoulders. Are they rolling forwards or back? Are they twisting? Are they shortening the side of my ribs into a side bend? Moving my hands around, letting that affect the shoulders, the ribs, where I'm looking, how much of a back bend I'm in. How much am I bending my back versus twisting my back versus side bending my back. Versus opening up my shoulders. I could do the whole thing with my hands on the ground. So if my back didn't want to bend into an extension, then I could just do the whole thing with my arms on the ground and just play with where can my arms go on the ground. In fact, I'm going to develop that so that I'm lying with my head on the ground and I'm taking my arms around me. Just seeing where my arms can go. And then I'm going to do the same thing but with my arms off the floor. So I'm taking one arm up, one arm down. I can bend them, I can lengthen them. I start to feel I want to draw my belly in a little bit and get my lower back longer while I'm doing this work in my shoulders. I'm taking my arms around. So this is really strengthening the upper back. Where can my hands go? Where can my arms go? How does the reaching and rotation of the hands and fingers affect the shoulder? How does each side compare to the other? Well, now I want to get my arch involved again, so I'm just coming up into an arch. Really feeling work through the back of the body. Doing circles. I've got my head turned to one side because that's comfy for me right now. Circling my arms, going the other way, circling my arms. Really feeling it in my shoulders, but in a way that I'm enjoying. And I'm just going to rest by tucking my hands underneath my chest, my elbows bent in. And I have my head turned to one side, it's comfier for me. So from this position, with my elbows tucked in underneath my chest, I've got little fists just in front of the top of my chest. I can roll onto one side and just draw my knees up and I'm back into that little fetus shape. I just breathe there. And I push my legs away and I can get back onto my belly with my arms underneath my chest. If I turn my head the other way, then I can do the same thing, bringing my knees up to the other side. Just coming into this little fetus shape on my second side. I'm going to tuck my t-shirt in because for what I'm about to do next. So I go from this little fetus shape, I push my legs away and go via my belly with my forehead down and like a little worm
to pull my knees into the other side. And I'm going to keep doing that, this little squirmy wormy, pulling my knees up on one side into that little fetus shape, pushing my legs away, and then drawing my knees up the other side. And now I'm starting to let my arms do different things. The hand generally has to feed underneath the body at this stage. So I go from the fetus shape on one side to lying on my belly. My hand has to feed underneath my belly to allow me to roll onto the other side. I'm not really repeating exactly how I do it, I'm just exploring different ways of doing it. And then I find that I can tuck my toes under as I'm coming through the middle and be in this kind of worm position. So I've got my hands down by my side, actually they're underneath my body. I've got my palms facing the ceiling, or rather they're actually touching my thighs. And I can have my toes tucked under there. And I'm just going to try and tuck my tailbone underneath so that I'm rounding my lower back, and then release. And I'm going to do that a few different ways. So I'm going to stick my bottom out, still playing with arching and rounding the back basically, but lying on my belly. So I was sticking my bottom out, the fold in the front of my hip creases, and then I tuck my tailbone underneath, tuck my tummy in, and my lower back rounds. And I go both ways, bottom out, tucking the tummy, bottom out, tucking the tummy. It's the equivalent of lying on the back and just rolling the pelvis up and down. But here I'm again working against gravity a little bit more. Keeping it really quite small because it's quite strong even though it's small. So I draw my tummy in, I really feel my lower back lengthen. And I can, as I tuck my tummy in and tuck my tailbone underneath, I can feel the lengthening pass up through my whole back. And then I go the other way and I can feel the arch rippling up through my whole back. I just make my arms wherever they're comfortable. You can have hands underneath the side of the pelvis if it's helpful, just to feel pelvis is tucking under one way and then sticking out the other way. I'm going to keep going with my head turned to the other side for a bit, just to even out my neck a little. The movement can be big and strong, or it can be really tiny and soft, exploring, rounding the lower back and arching the lower back. So right now I want to do a softer one, and I brought the back of my hands to the back of my body, just like I did when I was lying on my back at the beginning, and I brought my fingertips underneath my body as I was lying on my back. So again here, the back of my fingers and the back of my hands are spread out around the back of my low ribs waistline and the top of my pelvis, and that helps me feel what's going on with the rolling up and down of the pelvis and the opening and closing of the lower back, or rather lengthening and shortening. And I can use my hands to help guide the pelvis. And now I want to come back into something a little bit stronger. As I tuck my tailbone underneath, I'm feeling my glutes activating more. If I do a bigger movement, I stick my bottom out and arch my back and release my belly. I practice releasing my belly into the ground. It's tricky. Let the belly out. And then going the other way, incrementally, gradually lengthening the lower back, and then starting to draw the lower belly in. And then, if if I want, I can go further, lengthening the lower back even further, drawing the low back in, the low belly in even more, until I get to a place where I start to use my glutes as well, and I'm really pulling my belly right up off the floor. From here, I'm placing my hands under my shoulders and my finger, and tucking my toes under, and just coming into a little press up. But I want my knees on the ground. I'm keeping that feeling. I just lay my chest down again and keep that feeling. I'm really pulling my belly away from the ground. My low back is really long. The front of my hips are really open. And I'm starting to squeeze my belly to go a little bit further. My bottom, to go a bit further. And then I can come up again into this press up. I want to just do that a few times. I want to just play with this kind of solid plank feeling of my torso, from my knees, because I'm using my glutes, kind of from my knees through my belly and my ribs. And I open up into more of a back bend. Again, feeling my glutes more involved now. Having a little twist in the back bend. A bit deeper for me. This is really always about opening the front of the hips, because I have very inflexible hip flexors, very tight hip flexors. So I'm just being careful to not overdo it for my back while I'm trying to push the front of my hips open. Rolling my pelvis around. And then pushing back to rest in a little child's pose with my forehead down. My big toes together. I've got my knees together still. And I'm just basically, I want to come back into that little fetus shape. But here I can really rest, really let gravity do the work. I just tuck myself up, curl myself up. And I can feel that this position allows the back of my body to open. I can let my belly out. And then I just want to finish with a little bit more. So I'm still playing with basically everything is just rounding and arching the back. I'm going to just play with that in some different positions. So from this child's pose, I come forwards with my elbows on the ground. And I've got my hands just... the ideal is to have the palms kind of flat on the floor, but I'm just going to be loose about that and just bear in mind that I want to try that position at some times, but not be too strict about it. So I'm just going to round my back as much as I can and take my weight forwards and backwards between my knees and feet and my hands and elbows. So I've got my hands and elbows on the floor and I've got my knees and toes on the floor. My toes can be tucked under or long, both ways, and I can lift my bottom up off the ground, lowering my knees again. I'm just trying to round my back. I could lift my elbows up off the floor but keep my head dropped and my hands down. So maybe I make a clearer decision. My limitation is my toes are tucked under. So I'm starting with my toes tucked under, sitting my bottom over my knees, and my elbows on the ground with my palms flat on the floor and my head dropped. I have to keep my head dropped all the time, but I can, and I want to keep my back as rounded as I can all the time. But I can now choose if I have I'm taking my weight forwards and backwards, and I could choose if I want to let my elbows come off the ground, then I stretch more through my back in a different way. So I can take my weight forwards and backwards with my elbows off the ground. Then I can bring my elbows back onto the ground, taking my weight forwards and backwards. Really drawing my belly in. Then I can take my knees off the ground. Still trying to tuck my tailbone underneath, but I have to really push my elbows into the ground to take my weight forwards and backwards. Here as well, opening and closing my shoulders. And then I drop my knees down again. Just keep going forwards and backwards. Tucking my chin in now, tucking my head in as much as I can. And then having a last stretch, just stretching my arms forwards. And then I'm resting. I'm going to just come up to kneeling to circle my shoulders a couple of times. Circling my shoulders back. Releasing my jaw. And then I'm coming back to that same starting position. So, sitting back over my heels with my toes tucked under and my elbows and hands on the floor. But now, my head isn't dropped. I'm trying to find a long back, a long spine. So that means I need to stick my bottom out as much as I can. I'm feeling my sitting bones get wider. Wider and wider and wider. Sitting bones get wider. I'm trying not to just completely drop my ribs, but I'm trying to open across the chest. So here I am again, and I can shift my weight forwards and backwards, but now I'm trying to arch my back as much as possible. Here, if I lean forwards, I could lower my chest all the way down to my hands and come back. Sticking my bottom out. Getting a little press up through my arms. Palms flat on the floor. Trying to stay long in the back of the neck. And then I could choose to take my knees off the floor. I'm still trying to stick my bottom out as much as I can. So I'm trying to arch my lower back and be long through the whole of the rest of the back. This is pretty tough for me. I'm not going to drop my chest all the way down, but I can go towards that, so more arm strengthening. At the same time, sticking my bottom out means getting more lengthening through the legs, trying to imagine that my sitting bones are still getting wider and further apart. All of this can be approximated, so I could just keep my knees down if I want and keep playing with trying to open the sitting bones further. I could do it with my knees a little bit bent up here. Then I lower that. Just need to rest for a moment, resting back, my forehead on the ground. I'm going to come into all fours around the back, softly, just softly. Having a soft little twist. Shifting the weight, dropping the head. And then in all fours, finding my way back into that extension, sticking the bottom out. Slightly keeping my lower ribs in, just because I know that I overbend there. Getting my sitting bones as wide apart as I can. My shoulders are open, my shoulders are rolling back. Then I come down again onto my elbows with my palms on the floor. My toes are now tucked underneath again. Adjust my position. And now I could come up and off my elbows, so still trying to stay arched. And just feeling what's the difference now if I have my elbows coming on and off the ground. Taking my weight forwards and backwards with my elbows coming on and off the ground. This is not nearly as much strengthening in the arms. Instead, I'm really trying to stick my bum out and I'm really feeling the sitting bones going further apart. And then I want to just play with all of those things lifting the legs, lifting the elbows, coming onto all fours, coming into a sort of downward dog. That's what happens if elbows and knees are both lifted. Sticking the bottom out as much as I can. Coming down again. And now rounding, uncurling the toes, coming up to kneeling. So just a last little play with any rounding through my back and arching through my back. Coming forwards and backwards. The weight is transferring between the hands and feet, elbows and knees. And the back is just rounding and arching in any way that feels good. And then I extend it so that I can come all the way forwards again into my kind of cobra-ish position. And I want to feel how I come forwards, I push my pubic bone down towards the ground, and that uncurls my spine. I want to tuck my toes underneath a little bit, personally rolling my shoulders back. I can take my knees off the ground if I want. And then going the other way, looking down. As I look down, this ripples through my spine and picks up my pelvis and pushes me back. And I do it again, slowly rippling forwards and slowly rippling back. From the head first, I look back, and from the pubic bone and tailbone, pushing forwards first. I end up looking forward, so I'm rippling through my spine. Opening and closing. Really powerful lengthening and shortening of the muscles in the front and the back of the body. And then I'm going to roll onto my back and take a last rest. And just see how I feel now lying on my back. Bend my knees and stand my feet, see how that feels. And I just open and close my knees again. Take them side to side a little, just the things I did at the beginning to see how I was feeling. And I roll my pelvis up and down a little bit here. Feel my long, soft spine. I take my arms into the air, just to once again feel the contact of the back of the body, really nice against the ground. Feeling all the tissue sliding around a little bit. And I'm going to finish there for today.